Captain Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the U.S. Wanderer, watching the stars drift past through the main window. The year was 3047, and it had been exactly 1,000 years since the last major war between humans. Jake was 35 years old, born into a world that had never known real conflict. His uniform was clean and pressed, designed more for comfort than protection. The ship he commanded was built for exploration, not battle. "Captain, we're approaching the Kepler 442 system," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. She was 28, with bright eyes and a quick smile. Her job was to handle communications with new alien species they might meet. Amy had studied dozens of alien languages and customs, all in the hope of making peaceful contact. "Any signs of life?" Jake asked, settling into his captain's chair. The bridge was quiet and calm, filled with the soft hum of computers and life support systems. Everything was designed to be peaceful and efficient. Chief Engineer Pete Williams looked up from his console. He was a big man with gentle hands, 42 years old, and an expert at fixing anything mechanical. "Sensors are picking up energy signatures from the third planet. Looks like they have cities and space travel." "That's exciting," said Lisa Chun, the communications officer. She was 31 and had never met an alien species that didn't want to talk. "I'm already preparing the standard first contact package. Music, art, mathematical concepts, and our universal translator protocols." Jake nodded. This was how humanity had made contact with over 50 alien species in the past few centuries. They approached slowly, sent peaceful messages, and usually ended up with new friends and trading partners. The galaxy seemed to be full of civilizations that preferred cooperation to conflict. The Wanderer carried no weapons beyond basic mining, tools, and emergency equipment. Its cargo holds were filled with scientific instruments, cultural gifts, and trade goods. The crew of 43 people were all scientists, engineers, diplomats, and explorers. Not one of them had any military training because there had been no need for it. "Take us into the outer system," Jake ordered. "Standard peaceful approach. Amy, start broadcasting our friendship signals." Amy's fingers danced across her console. "Broadcasting now, sir. I'm sending mathematical concepts, musical scales, and our basic greeting in 17 different formats." The ship moved deeper into the alien star system. Through the windows, they could see the third planet growing larger. It was blue and green, like Earth, with white clouds swirling around it. Jake felt the familiar excitement of discovering new life. "Captain," Pete said, his voice suddenly worried, "I'm detecting multiple ships moving toward us. They're big, heavily armored, and they're coming fast." Jake frowned. This was unusual, but not necessarily dangerous. "Maybe they're just curious about us." "Amy, increase the power on our peaceful greeting signals." "Already done, sir," Amy replied. "I'm broadcasting on all frequencies." "Wait, I'm getting a response." The main screen flickered to life, showing an alien face that made everyone on the bridge step back. The creature looked like a cross between a crocodile and a shark, with silver scales and cold yellow eyes. Its mouth was full of sharp teeth, and it wore some kind of military uniform. "I am Commander Vextar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet," the alien said in perfect English. "You will surrender your vessel immediately." Jake stood up, confused. "I'm Captain Jake Harrison of the United Earthship Wanderer. We come in peace and wish to establish friendly relations with your people." Vextar's laugh was like grinding metal. "Peace? How amusing. We have studied your species for months. You have had no wars for 1,000 years. You carry no weapons. You are weak and ready for conquest." "There must be some misunderstanding," Jake said, his hands spread peacefully. "We don't want to fight anyone. We're explorers and scientists. We can offer you knowledge, trade, cultural exchange." "The only thing you can offer us is your surrender," Vextar replied. "My fleet has orders to test your defenses. When we discover you have none, the full might of the Zephyrian Empire will fall upon your pathetic civilization." Amy stepped forward. "Please, let's talk about this. Violence isn't necessary. We can find a peaceful solution that benefits everyone." Vextar studied her for a moment, then turned to someone off-screen. "Begin the attack. These creatures are even softer than our intelligence report suggested." The communication ended abruptly. Jake stared at the blank screen, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. In his entire life, he had never encountered a species that preferred violence to diplomacy. "Captain," Pete said urgently, "3 of their ships are targeting US with what look like weapons, big ones." "Evasive maneuvers," Jake ordered, though he wasn't sure what good it would do. The Wanderer wasn't built for combat. "Amy, send out a distress signal to Earth. Let them know what's happening here." "Already sending, sir," Amy replied, her fingers shaking slightly as she worked. Lisa looked up from her station, her face pale. "Captain, I'm intercepting their communications. They're calling us soft prey and easy targets. They think we're defenseless because we've been peaceful for so long." Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. For the first time in his life, he understood what his ancestors must have felt when faced with an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with. The Zephyrians had looked at humanity's 1,000 years of peace and seen only weakness. "They're firing," Pete announced. The ship shook as energy beams struck their hull. The Wanderers' shields, designed to protect against space debris and radiation, held for now. But Jake knew they wouldn't last long against military-grade weapons. "How long until Earth receives our message?" he asked. 3 days, Amy replied. "And another 3 days for any help to reach us." Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. These were good people, scientists and explorers who had never hurt anyone in their lives. They represented the best of what humanity had become during their 1,000 years of peace. But now, facing an enemy that saw their peaceful nature as weakness, Jake wondered if being peaceful had been a mistake. The ship shook again, harder this time. Alarms began to sound throughout the bridge. "Shields down to 60%, Pete reported. Jake made a decision that felt strange and unfamiliar. "Take us away from here, maximum speed. We need to warn Earth about what's coming." As the Wanderer fled from the Zephyrian ships, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. For 1,000 years, humanity had chosen peace over war. Now it seemed the choice was being taken away from them. Admiral Rex Thompson stood in his command center deep inside the Earth Defense Station, watching the emergency reports flood in from across human space. The massive screens around him showed 12 different star systems, all under attack at the same time. His weathered face remained calm, but inside he felt something he had never experienced before, the cold reality of war. "Admiral, we're getting distress signals from New Boston, Terra Nova, and Haven Prime," reported his aide, Commander Jane Foster. She was 34 years old and had joined the defense fleet, thinking it would be a peaceful career spent rescuing lost ships and handling natural disasters. The Zephyrian forces hit all 3 colonies within an hour of each other. Rex had been in charge of Earth's defenses for 8 years. Until 3 days ago, his biggest problem had been dealing with asteroid impacts and solar storms. The defense fleet had ships, but they were designed for rescue operations and space construction, not combat. The last military vessel built by humans had been scrapped 400 years ago. "What's the status of Captain Harrison's ship?" Rex asked. "The Wanderer reached the edge of human space 2 hours ago," Jane replied. "They're badly damaged, but alive. Captain Harrison's report confirms what we feared. The Zephyrians have been watching us for months, studying our defenses." "Or lack of them," Rex said quietly. He turned to the tactical display showing the 12 attack systems. How many people are we talking about? Approximately 40 million civilians across all the colonies, said his communications officer. Lieutenant Dan Brooks. The Zephyrians aren't just attacking military targets. They're hitting cities, farms, schools, everything. Rex felt his hands clench into fists. In his 57 years of life, he had never seen deliberate cruelty. The idea that someone would attack defenseless people seemed impossible to understand. Yet the reports kept coming in, each one worse than the last. On the planet Haven Prime, civilian administrator Katie Brooks was hiding in the basement of the Colonial Administration Building with 30 other survivors. She was 29 years old and had spent her entire career helping people build new lives on distant worlds. Now she watched through a small window as Zephyrian soldiers herded her neighbors into metal cages. "They're taking people away in those transport ships," whispered Dr. Gary Mills, who ran the colony's medical center. "The ones who resist get shot. The ones who cooperate get chained up like animals." Katie had never seen violence like this. On Haven Prime, the worst crime in recent memory had been someone stealing vegetables from a community garden. The colony had no police force because there was no crime. They had no weapons because there were no enemies. Now watching alien soldiers treat humans like livestock, Katie felt something dark and angry growing inside her chest. "We need to do something," she said. "What can we do?" asked Maria Santos, the colony's chief engineer. "We're farmers and scientists. They have weapons and armor." Katie looked around at the frightened faces in the basement. These were good people who had left Earth to build something beautiful and peaceful. They had created farms that fed thousands, schools that taught children, hospitals that healed the sick. Now all of it was being destroyed by creatures who saw kindness as weakness. "We know this planet better than they do," Katie said. "We built everything here. We know every tunnel, every building, every system." Back on Earth, President Alex Martinez called an emergency meeting of the Global Council. The world's leaders gathered in the Great Assembly Hall in Geneva, their faces showing the same shock and confusion that Rex Thompson felt. For the first time in 1,000 years, they had to discuss war. "The Zephyrian Empire has made their intentions clear," Alex said to the assembled delegates. "They don't want to negotiate. They don't want to trade. They want to conquer us and enslave our people." "But we're not soldiers," said Chancellor Emma Wright from the European Federation. "Our entire civilization is built on cooperation and peace. We don't know how to fight." "Then we need to learn," said General Liu Wei, one of the few people on Earth who studied military history. He was 68 years old and had spent his life reading about ancient wars, never thinking he would need to use that knowledge. "I've been going through the old archives. Our ancestors left us detailed records of warfare, strategy, and military technology." "You're talking about abandoning everything we've built," said Prime Minister John Carter from the Atlantic Union. "Our peaceful society, our culture of cooperation, our commitment to nonviolence." "No," Alex said firmly. "I'm talking about protecting it. The Zephyrians have made the choice for us. They've decided that our peaceful nature makes us easy targets. They're about to learn that being peaceful and being defenseless are two very different things." Dr. Sam Foster, Earth's leading historian, stood up slowly. He was 71 years old and had spent his life studying why humanity had chosen peace over war 1,000 years ago. "The records are clear. Our ancestors didn't stop fighting because they were weak. They stopped fighting because they were too good at it. They were afraid of what they might do to each other if they kept going." The room fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. "The genetic memory is still there," Sam continued. "The instincts, the intelligence, the capacity for strategic thinking. We chose to put these things aside, but we never lost them. The Zephyrians are about to remind us what we really are." Rex Thompson received new orders within hours. The Global Council had voted unanimously to activate the emergency defense protocols, documents that had been sealed for nearly 1,000 years. Factories that made consumer goods were ordered to retool for military production. Civilian ships were being converted into patrol vessels. Most importantly, the archives were being opened. "Admiral," Jane Foster said, her voice shaking slightly, "we're getting reports from Haven Prime. The colonists are fighting back. They're using mining equipment and construction tools as weapons. The Zephyrians are calling for reinforcements." Rex smiled for the first time in days. "Good. Send word to all our colonies. Tell them that Earth remembers how to fight. Tell them that help is coming." As the orders went out across human space, something ancient began to stir. For 1,000 years, humanity had chosen to be gardeners instead of warriors. Now faced with an enemy that mistook their choice for inability, they were about to remember why their ancestors had been so afraid of their own capacity for violence. Captain Jake Harrison crouched behind a pile of broken metal on the surface of Kepler 442b, the planet where they had first met the Zephyrians. His ship, the Wanderer, lay in pieces a mile away, shot down during their escape attempt. But Jake was no longer the same peaceful explorer who had tried to make friends with Commander Vextar 2 weeks ago. Something had changed inside him, something cold and calculating. "The patrol comes through here every 4 hours," whispered Amy Rodriguez, crawling up beside him. Her clean uniform was now torn and dirty, and her gentle smile had been replaced by hard eyes. "They always use the same route. They think we're too stupid to notice patterns." Pete Williams joined them, carrying a device that looked like a mining tool, but had been changed into something more dangerous. The big engineer's gentle hands had learned to build weapons instead of fixing peaceful machines. "The explosive charges are ready. When their transport stops at the checkpoint, we'll have about 30 seconds before their backup arrives." Lisa Chun spoke quietly into her communicator, her voice different than before. Instead of sending messages of peace to aliens, she now intercepted enemy communications and spread fear among Zephyrian forces. "Their commander is getting nervous. I've been broadcasting fake human military signals all night. He thinks we have a secret army hiding in the mountains." Jake nodded. 3 months ago, he would have been horrified by what they were planning. Now it felt natural, like remembering how to breathe. The Zephyrians had expected humans to surrender when faced with violence. Instead, they had awakened something that had been sleeping for 1,000 years. On Earth, the transformation was happening everywhere. Dr. Sarah Kim stood in a laboratory that had been used to cure diseases just months before. Now she was studying captured Zephyrian technology, looking for weaknesses. Her medical training had taught her how bodies worked. Now she was learning how to make them stop working. "Their armor has a critical flaw," she explained to Admiral Thompson through a video link. "The power source is located near their spine. A precise hit that will shut down their entire system. I'm sending the exact coordinates to all our forces." Admiral Thompson listened from his new command center, which had been built inside an old museum. The peaceful displays of human history had been replaced with tactical screens and communication equipment. Rex was no longer just a rescue coordinator. He had become something his ancestors would recognize, a war leader. "How are the factory conversions going?" he asked his aide, Jane Foster. "Better than expected," Jane replied. "The assembly lines that used to make personal computers are now producing targeting systems. The plants that built civilian transports are creating fighter ships. But the most impressive changes are in the people themselves." She was right. Across Earth and the surviving colonies, humans were changing in ways that surprised everyone. Teachers were becoming tactical analysts. Farmers were turning into guerrilla fighters. Artists were designing camouflage patterns. The same creativity that had built a peaceful civilization was now focused on war. Colonel Ben Hayes led the first organized counterattack on Terra Nova. He was 45 years old and had spent his career as a park ranger, protecting wildlife and helping lost hikers. Now he was leading 200 volunteers against a Zephyrian military base, using tactics that seemed to come from nowhere. "Remember," he told his people as they prepared for the assault, "they expect us to fight like them, straightforward, predictable, honor-bound. But we don't fight with honor, we fight to win." The attack came at dawn, but not from the direction the Zephyrians expected. Ben's forces had spent days digging tunnels, coming up inside the enemy base. They struck from below, from above, from all sides at once. The Zephyrian soldiers, trained for conventional warfare, had no idea how to respond to an enemy that refused to follow military rules. "They're like ghosts," reported Zephyrian Captain Mordak to his superiors. "They attack and disappear. They know the terrain better than we do. They use our own equipment against us. These cannot be the same creatures we studied." Commander Vex Tar, now in charge of the entire human invasion, was beginning to understand the magnitude of their mistake. He stood in his command ship, looking at reports that made no sense. Human resistance was growing stronger every day, not weaker. Their tactics were becoming more sophisticated, more ruthless. How is this possible? He demanded of his intelligence officer. "Our reports said they were peaceful. They had no military for 1,000 years. "Sir," the officer replied nervously, "I've been studying their historical records more carefully. I think we made an error in our analysis." "What kind of error?" "We assumed that their lack of warfare meant they had forgotten how to fight. But the records show something different. They didn't stop fighting because they couldn't. They stopped fighting because they were too good at it." On Haven Prime, Katie Brooks was no longer hiding in basements. She now led a network of 300 colonists who had turned their peaceful settlement into a fortress. The Zephyrians controlled the main city, but everything outside belonged to the humans. "They can't move supplies without our permission," she explained to Dr. Mills as they watched a Zephyrian convoy from the hills. "We control the water, the power, the food production. They're trapped in their own occupation zone." The convoy below carried wounded Zephyrian soldiers back to their medical facilities. Katie's people had learned to target the alien supply lines, their communication networks, their morale. They fought like their ancestors had fought, using intelligence instead of brute force. Back on Earth, President Martinez addressed the world from his new war room. "The Zephyrians made a simple mistake," he said. "They looked at our 1,000 years of peace and saw weakness. They didn't understand that peace was a choice, not a limitation. We chose to be gardeners instead of warriors. But we never forgot how to be warriors." Around the galaxy, other alien species were receiving reports about the human-Zephyrian conflict. The news was disturbing. The humans were not just defending themselves, they were winning. The species that had seemed so helpless was systematically destroying one of the galaxy's most powerful military forces. "Perhaps," said Ambassador Krulf of the Altarian Council, "we should reconsider our understanding of these humans. A species that chooses peace while retaining the capacity for war may be the most dangerous of all." Commander Vex Tar stood in his command center on Haven Prime, staring at casualty reports that made no sense. 6 months ago, his forces had conquered 12 human worlds in a single day. Now half of his army was dead or missing, and the humans were hunting his soldiers through the streets of their own occupied cities. "Sir," his aide reported with trembling voice, "we've lost contact with 3 more patrol groups. The humans are using some kind of new technology to track our communications." Vextar's scaled hands gripped the edge of his command table until his claws left marks in the metal. The invasion that was supposed to take weeks had become a nightmare that stretched on for months. Every day brought new reports of impossible human victories. "How can primitives without military training defeat our professional soldiers?" he demanded, Before his aide could answer, the lights in the command center flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, but the damage was already done. Somewhere in the darkness, human saboteurs had struck again, 200 miles away. Captain Jake Harrison crouched in the ruins of a Zephyrian communication station, watching Pete Williams work magic with alien technology. The engineer had become something none of them expected: a master of electronic warfare, who could turn enemy systems against themselves. "Got it," Pete whispered, his fingers dancing over the captured control panel. "I've broken into their command network. Amy, you should have access to their fleet communications now." Amy Rodriguez, once a diplomat who spoke 17 alien languages, had become something far more dangerous. She understood how the Zephyrian mind worked, and she used that knowledge to spread fear and confusion through their ranks. "Perfect," she said, putting on her headset. "Attention all Zephyrian forces. This is Ghost Leader. We have your position. Surrender now or face the consequences." There was no Ghost Leader. There was no organized human military on this planet. But the Zephyrians didn't know that. For months, Amy had been creating phantom human units, making small groups of survivors sound like vast armies. The psychological warfare was working better than any weapon on Earth. Admiral Thompson watched the tactical display in his command center with growing satisfaction. Operation Retribution was about to begin, the largest coordinated human military action in over 1,000 years. Ships that had been converted from civilian transports were gathering at the edge of human space, ready to take back their occupied worlds. "All fleet commanders report ready," announced Jane Foster, who had transformed from a peaceful aide into a capable military coordinator. "We have 47 ships armed and prepared for combat operations." 47 ships against the entire Zephyrian fleet? Asked Dr. Kim, who had joined the command staff as a technical advisor. "The odds don't look good." Admiral Thompson smiled grimly. "The Zephyrians are thinking the same thing. They expect us to fight like them, ship against ship, strength against strength. They're about to learn that humans fight differently." The first target was the Zephyrian stronghold orbiting New Boston. Lieutenant Colonel Nina Parker led the assault from her flagship, a converted mining vessel called the Determination. She was 36 years old and had spent her career designing space habitats. Now she was using that same engineering knowledge to destroy enemy installations. "Remember the plan," she told her captains over the communication system. "We don't try to overpower them. We outthink them. Target their command ships first, then their supply vessels. Make them fight blind and hungry." The attack began at 03:00 ship time. The human fleet didn't charge straight at the enemy like the Zephyrians expected. Instead, they split into small groups, approaching from multiple directions using asteroid fields and debris clouds for cover. The Zephyrians found themselves facing attacks from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Their tactics make no sense," reported Zephyrian Admiral Cross to his high command. "They sacrifice valuable ships to destroy our supply freighters. They ignore our battle cruisers to attack communication relays. They fight like they want to disable us, not defeat us." "That's exactly what they want," replied Fleet Commander Zorth from his massive flagship. "They're trying to make us retreat instead of destroying us completely. It shows they're still weak, but Zorth was wrong. The humans weren't showing weakness, they were showing intelligence. Dr. Kim's research had revealed that Zephyrian ships needed constant resupply of a rare fuel to operate their weapons. Cut off their supply lines, and their mighty warships became expensive floating boxes. Captain Harrison's team achieved their biggest victory when they captured a Zephyrian command vessel intact. Pete Williams immediately went to work on the alien computer systems, his engineering background helping him understand technologies that had taken the Zephyrians centuries to develop. "This is incredible," he told his team as data flowed across his screens. "Their entire communication network runs through central command nodes. If we can access one of these nodes, we can listen to everything they're saying across the entire invasion fleet. Within hours, human forces had real-time intelligence about every Zephyrian movement in occupied space. Ambushes that should have been impossible became routine. Supply convoys disappeared before they reached their destinations. Command posts fell silent without warning on Terra Nova. Colonel Ben Hayes received the intelligence data just in time to save his outnumbered forces. The Zephyrians were planning a massive sweep operation to eliminate human resistance once and for all. Instead of running, Ben decided to turn the trap around. "They expect to find us hiding in the eastern mountains," he told his fighters. "Instead, we'll be waiting for them in the western valleys. When they realize their intelligence is wrong, we'll be behind them." The battle became a masterpiece of human tactical thinking. The Ben's people used the terrain they knew better than any invader, striking from positions the Zephyrians thought were impossible to reach. They turned the aliens' own advanced technology against them, using captured weapons and vehicles to create chaos in enemy ranks. "Sir," reported Zephyrian Captain Veltar to Admiral Cross, "we're not fighting an army, we're fighting the entire planet. Every human civilian is a potential enemy. Every building could be a fortress. Every piece of technology we abandon gets turned into a weapon against us." The truth was starting to sink in across the Zephyrian Empire. They hadn't invaded a weak, peaceful species. They had invaded a civilization that had chosen peace while retaining every skill needed for war. Now that choice had been taken away, and the galaxy was seeing what humans could really do when they stopped holding back. Emperor Zethkar himself received the disturbing reports in his palace on the Zephyrian homeworld. For the first time in his reign, one of his invasions was failing. Worse, it was failing against a species his generals had promised would surrender without fighting. "Bring me everything we know about human history," he commanded his advisors. "I want to understand what we're really facing." The answer, when it came, terrified him. Humans hadn't evolved beyond warfare. They had mastered it so completely that they could choose when and how to fight. That choice made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Emperor Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator, watching the blue marble of Earth grow larger through the massive viewport. Behind him stretched the largest fleet the Zephyrian Empire had ever assembled, over 300. Warships carrying the finest soldiers in the galaxy. This was his final gamble. If he could conquer humanity's home world, their resistance across the galaxy would crumble. "Your Majesty," reported Fleet Admiral Cross, "our scouts confirm that Earth's defenses are weaker than expected. They have only 60 ships protecting their entire system. We outnumber them 5-1. Zethkar nodded, but he felt none of the confidence he had possessed 8 months ago when this invasion began. The humans had already proven that numbers meant nothing when facing an enemy that refused to fight by conventional rules. Still, Earth was different. This was their heart, their home. Surely they would fight traditionally to protect it. "Begin the assault," he commanded. Admiral Rex Thompson watched the approaching Zephyrian fleet from his command ship, the Guardian. Around him, the Earth Defense Fleet looked pitifully small compared to the enemy armada. But Rex was no longer the rescue coordinator who had commanded peaceful operations just months ago. He had become something his ancestors would recognize, a warrior protecting his home. "All ships, this is Admiral Thompson," he broadcast to his fleet. "The enemy thinks they know how this battle will go. They expect us to meet them head-on. Ship against ship. They're about to learn that humans don't fight the way others expect." Captain Jake Harrison sat in the captain's chair of his new ship. The Wanderer, too. It was built from the wreckage of his old exploration vessel, but now it carried weapons designed by Pete Williams and communication systems perfected by Amy Rodriguez. Lisa Chun coordinated with the entire human fleet, her peaceful translator skills now used to synchronize attacks across dozens of ships. "Jake," Amy said from her tactical station. I'm reading massive Zephyrian fleet formations approaching from 3 directions. They're trying to surround us. Let them, Jake replied. The more spread out they are, the easier this becomes. Pete, are the surprise packages ready? Pete Williams grinned from his engineering station. Every asteroid between here and Mars is now a potential weapon. The Zephyrians are about to discover what happens when you fight an enemy in their own home. System. The battle began exactly as Emperor Zithkar expected. The human ships moved to engage his fleet in what appeared to be conventional formation. But within minutes, everything changed. The asteroids that should have been empty rock suddenly activated with hidden engines and weapon systems. Debris. Fields that looked natural revealed themselves to be carefully constructed minefields. Impossible, breathed Admiral Cross as his tactical display filled with new threats. They've weaponized their entire solar system. Dr. Sarah Kim's research had paid off in ways the Zephyrians never imagined. Every weakness in their armor, every flaw in their ship designs, every predictable pattern in their tactics had been cataloged and exploited. Human ships targeted the exact points that would cause catastrophic system failures in Zephyrian vessels. Their neural implants, Dr. Kim explained from her position on Thompson's Bridge, they're linked to their ship computers, if we can overload those connections with the right frequency, their entire crew becomes helpless. The weapon she had designed was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to destroy Zephyrian ships with brute force, it turned their own technology against them. Across the battlefield, enemy vessels simply stopped working as their crews collapsed from neural feedback. Emperor Zethkar watched in horror as his mighty fleet began to fall apart. Ships that had conquered a dozen worlds found themselves drifting helplessly through space. His finest soldiers, warriors who had never known defeat, were unconscious at their posts. How is this possible? He demanded. We have superior numbers, superior firepower, superior training. Your Majesty, his science advisor said quietly, I have been studying the human historical records as you requested. I believe I understand what we are facing. Explain. The humans did not evolve to be peaceful, Your Majesty. They evolved to be the most dangerous predators on their planet. For millions of years, they hunted creatures larger and stronger than themselves, using only intelligence and cooperation. When they developed technology, they became even more deadly. Zethkar listened with growing dread as his advisor continued. 1,000 years ago, they had weapons that could destroy entire planets. They had created artificial intelligence that could think faster than any biological mind. They had mastered genetic engineering, space warfare, and psychological manipulation. But they realized they were becoming too dangerous for their own good, so they chose to stop. Exactly, Your Majesty. They didn't lose the ability to wage war. They chose to use their skills for creation instead of destruction. But when we threatened their people, we reminded them what they really are. On the battlefield, Captain Jake Harrison coordinated the final phase of the human counterattack. The surviving Zephyrian ships were trapped between layers of human defenses they had never seen coming. Escape was impossible. Surrender was their only option. This is Captain Harrison to all Zephyrian vessels, he broadcast. You came here expecting to find weak prey. Instead, you found predators who had chosen to be peaceful. We gave you every chance to leave our people alone. You refused. Emperor Zethkar felt something he had never experienced before, fear. Not just fear of death, but fear of what these humans might do to his empire if they chose to take revenge. We surrender, he broadcast to the human fleet. Surrender is not enough, came the reply from Admiral Thompson. You will withdraw from all human territory immediately. You will release every human prisoner. You will pay compensation for the damage you have caused. And you will spread word throughout the galaxy about what happens to those who mistake our peaceful nature for weakness. And if we refuse, The answer came not from Thompson, but from President Martinez, broadcasting from Earth to the entire Zephyrian fleet. "For 1,000 years we proved we could choose peace over war," Martinez said calmly. "In 8 months we proved we can choose war over peace just as easily. The choice of what happens next is yours, Emperor. But understand this, we are done holding back." Around the disabled Zephyrian flagship, human ships moved with predatory grace. They could have destroyed the entire enemy fleet in minutes. Instead, they waited, letting the full weight of human capability sink into alien minds. Emperor Zethkar looked around his bridge at his defeated officers and made the only choice available to him. Signal all Zephyrian forces across the galaxy. Full withdrawal from human space begins immediately. All prisoners to be released unharmed. As the broken Zephyrian fleet limped away from Earth, word spread quickly through the galaxy. The species that had seemed so peaceful and defenseless had revealed themselves to be apex predators who had simply chosen to garden instead of hunt. That choice, the galaxy now understood, made them the most dangerous species anyone had ever encountered. Humanity returned to their peaceful ways, but the universe would never forget what they had seen. Peace, they learned, was far more terrifying when it came from strength rather than weakness. And somewhere in the vastness of space, other aggressive species quietly canceled their expansion plans into human territory, choosing wisdom over the fate of the Zephyrian Empire.